Alright you guys, so for today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to take your face from this to this. And I'm going to be sharing with you my full coverage cream highlight and contour routine. This is a routine I go to when I want my face to look flawless in pictures. I want my highlight and contour to pop, and I want my makeup to last. This is very long lasting, so it's going to be great for a wedding, if you have an event to go to, if you're a glam girl and you like, to be super glam for work and you want your makeup to last throughout the workday. This is going to stay in place. So we're going to start off by prepping the skin. Prepping the skin is super important when you're going to be using cream products for highlight and contour, because you are putting a decent amount of product on your face. So you want the makeup to last. You don't want it to cake up. If you are dry, I definitely suggest doing a good skincare routine with a good moisturizer to really prep the skin, because really makeup starts with skincare, and if you want your skin and your base to look flawless, you need to take care of your skin. If you have super dry, flaky skin, this routine probably isn't going to work for you because it's just going to end up looking cakey. So definitely take care of your skin, exfoliate, all of that. So I'm going to now move on to primer. I'm using the Touch in Sol No Pore Blend Primer. This is a nice lightweight primer, but it's also going to fill in pores and keep me matte. And then I'm going to move on to foundation. So I like to use a more lightweight foundation when I'm going to be doing cream and highlight contour, and I totally thought I was going to be cool like those Instagram girls and apply it directly to my face, and it literally squirted directly onto my pants. So yeah, that's cool. But anyways, I like to use a more lightweight foundation just because we're going to be using cream products, like I said, to highlight and contour, so I don't want to put too much product in my face. So I feel like going in with a lighter foundation and then covering up what I need to with the concealer is better and works for my skin. This L'Oreal Freshwear 24-hour foundation I did a video on. I will link it down below. Go check it out. But I love this foundation. It is super lightweight. I feel like products layer really nicely on top of it because it's not too thick and it's very long lasting. So this is my favorite foundation as of right now. My skin looks amazing every time I use it. So I definitely recommend it. Like I said, especially if you're going to be highlighting, contouring with cream products. It's nice because it's really liquidy and lightweight on the skin. So you're not going to feel cakey when you apply this and then highlight and contour. So I'm just blending that out with my e.l.f. brush. As you saw, I like to just pat it into my skin. I don't swipe. You get the most coverage that way. And then I'm just using a little brush to get around my eyebrows. Okay, moving on to the highlighting and contouring. I'm going to be using a concealer by the brand Jouer. I believe it's the High Coverage Essential Concealer. I love this concealer. It is pretty thick. I am going to warn you, and it is pretty creamy. However, the fact that it is so creamy, it gives you more time to work on blending. It doesn't set right away like a liquidy concealer would. This is honestly maybe even more coverage, or may even have more coverage than the Tarte Shape Tape. It's pretty awesome. I definitely recommend it. I'm using the shade Creme Brulee on the very inner corners of my eyes where I have more darkness because it's more of a warmer color. And then I'm taking the shade Chiffon to really highlight. So when you highlight, you want to highlight the center of the face and basically any areas you want to bring forward. So underneath the eyes, on the chin, on the cupid's bow, on the nose, and the forehead. If you have a smaller forehead, you're going to want to highlight a little bit more on the forehead to make the illusion of a bigger forehead. Now we're going to move on to contouring. All the shades I use will be listed in the description box. But this is a nice like neutral brown. It's not too warm and it's also not too dark, which is important. You don't want to go too dark. But you're just going to want to contour basically where your cheeks concave in. And I actually go like right above where they start to dip in, because once you start blending it out, it is going to kind of spread out a little bit, so you don't want it to be too low, the contour, otherwise it's going to change the shape of your face in a bad way. I am going on the sides of my nose as well to contour it. I don't usually contour my nose, to be honest. I'm just doing it for the sake of the video. Every nose contour is going to be different depending on your nose. My nose actually doesn't look good contoured. I have a crooked nose and one nostril lifts up more than the other because I believe it's from my deviated septum. I do have a deviated septum, and I'm guessing that's why my nose does that. I don't know, because it wasn't always like that. But anyways, I do go on the forehead. If you have a small forehead, I recommend not contouring your forehead because it's just gonna look smaller. And I also went under the lip as well to cast a shadow underneath my lip just to make it look a little bit fuller and more pouty. Now I'm taking a concealer brush and just kind of spreading out the product a little bit before I go in and actually blend it out. I'm just kind of smoothing out the product just so it's not all in like one area. So yeah, I'm just using a little concealer brush for that. This is by Bdellium Tools. And once you have that spread out, you're going to look a little crazy. Oh, and I'm also taking whatever was left on the brush and just going right underneath the lip. I don't know why, I just like doing that. It looks a little bit cleaner there and just kind of brightens up that area. So for the highlight, I'm going to use a beauty sponge to blend it out. I personally like to use a sponge to blend out my highlight. I feel like a brush sometimes, I don't know, it just doesn't give me the same finish. I feel like a sponge gives me more of like an airbrush soft finish. I did just use the brush just to blend out a little bit more, but I always initially go in with a sponge first. And I usually blend out my highlight first and then the contour, but I guess you could blend out the other way around, whatever you prefer. And then now I'm going to go in with this little brush that we were using before just to get in that inner corner, and I'm going to use the same brush we used to blend out our foundation and start blending out the contour. You can use a smaller brush if you want the contour to be really precise, but I actually don't mind the way this works, and it actually blends out the contour really nicely, so I usually just use whatever foundation brush I use. And again, I like to push it into the skin. I don't like to swipe too much because you don't want to disrupt the foundation underneath. You don't want to start moving that around because that's when you're going to get some issues with patchiness. And again, keep your beauty sponge in hand so you can just go over everything and make sure it's really seamless and blended. And whatever leftover concealer is on the sponge, it's just going to help blend out the contour even further. And then I always like to take what's left and kind of blend it underneath the chin and jawline. I don't go too crazy contouring the jawline. Some people do, but I don't feel the need for it, so I just kind of take whatever's left on my brush. And yeah, now I'm going to start blending out the middle of the nose contour again with the sponge. I think the key with nose contour is you don't want it to be too harsh. Like I said, I don't usually contour my nose, but for the sake of the video, I'm just showing you how I would. So I'm just taking it down the sides of the nose just to make it look and appear a little bit smaller. And then my little tip for nose contour is I like to take a little bit of whatever foundation I was using and just kind of run my sponge over the whole nose just to kind of disguise any harsh lines or anything like that. And it's always good to bring your nose contour up into the brow area. It just kind of really sculpts the eye into the nose and just makes it look really seamless and not like harsh nose contour and then eyes. You know, it just kind of all blends in together. But the highlighting doesn't stop there. I always like to highlight my brow bone, and I also use this concealer to clean up my brows just to make them look more precise and disguise any hairs that maybe need to be tweezed. So this just really lifts the brow up and also just makes your eyebrows look way more precise, like I said. So I'm just using the same concealer with a tiny little concealer brush just to go right underneath that brow and then blending it out. I just added a little bit more of the chiffon color just to highlight even further. Obviously you don't have to do this. I just wanted a little bit more brightness, but yeah, that's optional. Now moving on to setting everything. This is really important. You want to make sure all these cream products are set in place. So I like to use RCMA No Color Powder, especially with this concealer because it is so thick. You don't want to use a really thick translucent powder. The Laura Mercier I feel like could potentially be a little bit too heavy. The RCMA No Color Powder is really finely milled and really lightweight, so I feel like it matches with this concealer really nicely because it's not going to be too heavy, because if you have a really heavy concealer and a really heavy powder, it's going to result in you feeling really cakey. So I'm just baking underneath the eyes, and then I'm also taking this little slanted brush from the Jaclyn Hill collection, and I'm just kind of bringing the powder up to where my nose contour is just to really clean up those lines. And I also put it down the center of my nose. I put it on the center of my forehead, and now I'm cleaning up my contour with the powder. This is really going to help make sure that your contour is really precise and, you know, where it needs to be. So if you brought your contour down too low, don't worry, you can always bake and kind of clean everything up. And then I took a little bit of the Maybelline Fit Me loose powder. This is a great drugstore powder. And I took it in the shade medium, and I'm just setting my contour area because I am going to be adding a little bit of bronzer. So if you're going to be adding powder products over cream products, you're going to want to make sure it is lightly set so nothing gets like muddy or patchy. And now I'm taking another brush from the Jaclyn Hill collection, and I'm going to be just dusting away that powder. I only leave my baking on for about 2 minutes. I really don't go more than that. I feel like you don't need to go more than that. It kind of does what it needs to in just that short amount of time. I don't like my under eyes to get super dry, so I feel like that's the perfect amount of time for me, but everybody's different. So I'm just making sure I really blend everything out. And now I'm going to take MAC Give Me Sun bronzer, and I'm just going to slightly bronze up my face with this. I'm not going too crazy, but I'm just using a big fluffy brush, and I'm just going to run this around the perimeters of my face. And now I'm going to take the blush by Milani in Corallina, and I'm just going to apply this to the apples of my cheeks, bringing it upwards a little bit. Since we did cream contour, I'm not going to need to really go in with a powder contour unless you want it to be super poppin' in your contour. Then, of course, you could go over it, but I like to just use a bronzer. And now I'm going to spray my face with setting spray before I go in with my highlight. I'm using the INGLOT Sparkling Dust in number 2, I believe. And I'm also spraying the brush directly, so it's really, really beaming. So I'm just applying that to the tops of my cheekbones. Again, this is just going to, you know, highlight your face even further, kind of lift your cheeks up a little bit, and just kind of brighten up the face and add some life to it since we did add so much powder. And I know my lip contour looks a little weird. I don't know. I guess the lighting I was using made it look like that. It didn't look like that in person, but now I'm taking the Amrezy highlighter by Anastasia and just highlighting down the bridge of my nose, and then at the very tip. This is going to give you that little button nose effect. And I'm just taking a little bit of a contour powder from the MAC contour kit and just kind of going in a little circle around the tip of my nose just to, again, give that little button nose effect. It doesn't really work on my nose because my nose doesn't look good contoured, but I just wanted to share that tip with you. Like, if you have a good nose for contouring, then you can do that. Now I love this product, by the way. This is the Laura Mercier Translucent Glow Powder, and I like to apply this on the center of my face. It is a very, very subtle glow from within glow, but it just adds a nice like little shine to the face, a little sheen, and makes you look really healthy and just kind of brings life back to the face after adding all that baking powder and all of that. So I really love that, and I just use a very loose brush to apply it. You don't want to use anything too compact and like too dense. Now taking I think it's called Emphasize by MAC. This is a brightening powder, And if I feel like my eyes still need a little bit more brightening, I will go in with that powder by MAC, and it just kind of really brightens the under eyes. So that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, I hope you learned something new about highlighting and contouring. I promise your face will look flawless with this routine, and I will see you in my next video.